A is for alligator and Aston Martin. And again, I'm doing the A tag again. My name is Jim. This is my channel, Books, Reading and Stuff. In May of 2021, when I was a fledgling booktuber, I put out an original tag, the A tag. I followed it up with the other letters of the alphabet going through to Z or Z, and a lot of wonderful booktubers took up these tags. I'm not going to be doing all of these tags again, just the A tag, because I like the prompts and because so many wonderful booktubers did the A tag. A is for America. This is South America. This is North America. Here we have the USA. What do you consider the great American novel? It's not this part of America. This is not Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Isabel Allende or Borges, but from the United States. John William DeForest coined the idea of the great American novel in an essay that was published in 1868. He suggested that it hadn't been written at that time, although one candidate he suggested was Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Since then, there have been many novels suggested as the great American novel. Steve Donoghue, in his rendition of the A tag, he suggested that it should be broken down into centuries, and for the 19th century, he would suggest Moby Dick. And for the 20th century, he suggests House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Other suggestions have been The Great Gatsby. Something about the American novel must capture the great American spirit, the great American dream, the idea that by working hard, you can achieve anything in America, although there's lots of barriers depending on your gender, your race, and many other factors. It's not easy to achieve the American dream if you're not a great white American. Brian at Bookish put out a video, What is the Great American Novel? And he suggested 25 candidates for that, including he began with Beloved by Toni Morrison, who's not a white American male, she's a black American female. And Beloved is a lot about the slave experience, about a former slave who goes to Ohio and kills one of her children because she fears being taken back into slavery. Indigenous authors are not usually considered for the great American novel. Brian also suggested that the great American novel has to be written by an American, so Martin Chuzzlewit by Charles Dickens wouldn't count. America by Franz Kafka wouldn't count. And it has to be set in America, so a lot of Hemingway's novels are set in Europe, so they wouldn't count either. I don't think there is a great American novel, but if I had to suggest one, I would suggest East of Eden by John Steinbeck because of its scope, going from Salinas and the West into the East. It covers a broad scope. America is very diverse, and it's a fantastic epic tale. Gina Stania, in her version of the A tag, showed us the great American novel because Philip Roth had put out a book entitled The Great American Novel. A is for ARC. I'm not talking about advanced reader copy, which is for a lot of booktubers ARCs, the books we get to have a look at before they're published. I'm talking about character arcs. Which character in literature has the most interesting character arc? There are many, there are countless examples in literature. It's about the story of the protagonist, their evolution, how they change throughout the book. Game of Thrones, there's many character arcs for different characters. Jaime Lannister starts off as this very much a bad guy, very self-important, a great swordsman, but he was a traitor. He killed the previous king. But his character changes when he's imprisoned and he's taken in imprisonment by Brienne of Tarth, and he becomes a more sympathetic character. There's Walter White in Breaking Bad, in a TV series. He starts as a chemistry teacher and he ends up as a drug kingpin, and it's a great character arc. For me, I would choose a classic one of Scrooge. Scrooge starts as this mean-spirited miser. He suggests that the poor, if they be like to die, they had better do it, and so decrease the surplus population, this Malthusian idea. But he ends up as a generous man, offering to buy a goose for the Cratchit family, and he's changed by his experiences in the book. A is for Australia. This is emu dreaming. Here we have the hunters, here we have the emu tracks going to the waterholes. This is in the style of Australian Aboriginal painting. It's from Alice Springs in Australia. Australia is famous for kangaroos and boomerangs and dropping things on the floor. And what was the last book you read by an author from Australia? For me, it was The Chemistry of Tears by Peter Carey. Peter Carey has won the Booker Prize before, but The Chemistry of Tears was not a winner of the Booker Prize, and it was not set in Australia. It was set in a museum in London. It was okay, but it wasn't the best. His book about the Kelly Gang was far more interesting. A is for Jane Austen. It's Jane Austen July. What have you read for Jane Austen July? Or what are you reading for Jane Austen July? On my TBR for Jane Austen July, I had Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Alcott's another A, but this is not Jane Austen. But I thought the character of Jo March in here was similar to the character of Elizabeth Bennet. They're both feisty females in 19th century literature. So I thought that would be interesting, but I didn't read this, or I haven't read this. What I have read is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, which talks about the difficulties of writing for women when they didn't have a room of one's own, a room of their own. Jane Austen didn't have a room of her own that she could lock. She didn't have an independent income to finance her writings, and yet she wrote great literature. A is for automobile. What is your favourite literary automobile? For me, it'll be James Bond's Aston Martin DB5 from Thunderball. A is for anonymous. What's your favourite book or poem that was published anonymously? For me, I'd choose Frankenstein. We know now it's by Mary Shelley, but it was originally published anonymously. In the 19th century, it wasn't considered proper for women to publish literature. And before then, it was even less proper. If Shakespeare had a sister, as Virginia Woolf talks about, she wouldn't have had the opportunities that William Shakespeare had, even if she shared the same genius. But Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was published originally anonymously, and it was a pioneer of both science fiction and horror fiction, and it's a great read. It was published originally in 1818, and Mary Shelley was just 19 when she wrote this. A is for autobiography. What was the last autobiography or memoir that you read? I know these are different, autobiography and memoir, but what's the last one you read? The last I read was a memoir, and this was A Life in Parts by Bryan Cranston, the actor who played Walter White in Breaking Bad, and it was fascinating, his career as an actor, how he would take any part, whether it was in a soap opera or on theatre, just to get the experience to increase his career prospects and to hone his acting skills. A is for audiobooks. Do you consider listening to an audiobook as reading? I know this is quite a controversial topic. I prefer to read with my eyes and listen with my ears. When you listen to an audiobook, you lose something like the pacing, like the tone, and it's a different experience. It's something you can do while you're doing something else, like you're driving. You can't physically read the book, but you can listen to the audiobook. When you're doing household chores, you can listen to an audiobook. And sometimes it's good to listen for different accents, like the African American vernacular, to get an authentic voice reading the story for you. But I prefer to read a physical book or to read the ebook rather than listen to the audiobook. I know many of you did the A tag originally when I did it 3 years ago. There was about 40 other booktubers who did this. Who do I tag? I tag Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. I know he did the A tag originally, but I didn't originally tag him. And he's also Alan. And also another bibliophile reader is also A. And I know Greg has already done the A tag. But see if your answers have changed as you have progressed. I'll also tag Steve Donahue because he always gives interesting answers. I'll tag Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading because she's read a lot of the Pulitzer Prize winners, if not all of the Pulitzer Prize winners, and they have to be American, so she might have a good idea about what is the great American novel or what candidates could be put forward for the great American novel. And Brian at Bookish, because again, he looked at 25 novels which could be considered candidates for a great American novel. Also, if these prompts interest you and you'd like to do it, please consider yourself tagged. I'd like as many people to do this or to do this again as possible. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. This will help me with the YouTube algorithm, another A. And I will see you on the next video. Arrivederci.